Man, I ain't hiding nothing about what Claressa is saying, and every syllable coming out her mouth right now is a straight lie, and when she squeezed off in my direction I didn't even flinch. I walked down there myself and I turned the temperature up on the whole block. Come on. Come on. Come right here, cousin. Come right here. Oh, my baby. Come up here. Come up here. Come up here. And that was just the warning shot. Hey y'all, welcome back to the stream, and I need y'all to buckle in because this one has layers and this one has a body count of reputations. Sending the whole timeline nothing but light, clarity, and the kind of energy that keeps you protected today. Quick heads up before we lock in, everything you're about to sit through is Shalita's own words, said on her own live stream, in her own voice, and this breakdown is strictly commentary and pure entertainment. That is the disclaimer. Now let's peel this thing open, because the world calls Claressa Shields the greatest woman of all time inside the ring, but what Shalita just did outside the ring may be the loudest hit Claressa Shields has ever taken in her whole career. Because Claressa Shields, the same Claressa Shields the world calls the GWOAT, the two-time undisputed, the Flint-born champion who has an Olympic medal folded into her name, is now the same Claressa Shields whose own blood cousin just went live, dialed the police, waved .40 caliber talk into the camera, and dragged half the family tree into one recording that is currently ricocheting across every timeline in America. And when I tell you Shalita did not blink, I mean she did not blink. She lit the fuse and stood next to the explosion. She stood next to it and filmed it. She narrated it. She invited every single viewer on that live to become a witness in a case that has not been filed yet. Straight up, she opens the whole stream cold. No warm-up, no small talk, no soft pivot. The very first thing Shalita puts on the table is that she does not care what Claressa Shields is telling people, that the entire narrative Claressa Shields is pushing right now is a lie, and that when Claressa Shields fired off in her direction the first time, she didn't fold, she didn't run, and she didn't call anybody, she walked down there and pressed the situation herself. That is not a Facebook post. That is not a subtweet. That is not a passive-aggressive Instagram story with a black background and a quote about betrayal. That is a woman going on record, in real time, saying the reigning female boxing star of a generation crossed her, and she reciprocated with pressure. And baby, once a sentence like that leaves your mouth on a live feed, there is no soft edit, there is no re-record, there is no publicist waiting in the wings to smooth it over. Everything Shalita said in that first minute of the stream is now a permanent part of the Claressa Shields story, whether Claressa Shields likes it or not. Now peep this next detail because it is the piece the internet already refuses to let go of. Shalita repeats one phrase over and over across a stretch of the stream. Come up here. Come up here. Come up here. She is not glitching. She is not stalling. She is not searching for the next word. She is manufacturing a rhythm on purpose because she knows the phone is filming and she wants the tension of that street to travel through the screen and into your chest. And after that repetition lands, she drops the line that is now already being screen recorded and stitched by every commentary account online. She calls it her warning shot. A warning shot. Say that word to yourself one time. Roll it around. Feel the weight of it. Warning shot is not casual language. Warning shot is not a heat-of-the-moment word. Warning shot is a piece of terminology borrowed straight from law enforcement, from military language, from movies about people who mean business. That is not the language of a woman apologizing. That is the language of a woman telling Claressa Shields, on camera, that everything that has happened so far has been a preview. Now listen. What Shalita said right after that is the part one want the algorithm to underline in red. She said she is here for 40 days and 40 nights, that she is not going anywhere, that she is only giving the people what they came for. 40 days and 40 nights. That is biblical language. That is flood language. That is Old Testament language dropped into a modern family feud, and I do not think that was an accident. Because Shalita is telling you, in coded words, that this is not going to be a quick news cycle. She is telling you she is prepared to keep this story burning for over a month. And then, without missing a breath, she pivots and jabs at another woman she names Shabria, saying the whole situation only shows just how these girls really move. And that pivot is not a slip. That pivot is Shalita's entire operating system in this stream. Every accusation she throws at Claressa Shields is instantly followed by a personal insult at somebody in the orbit. It is never just here is what happened. Here is what happened, and while I am at it, let me tell the whole internet exactly who each of you are underneath the makeup and the belts and the interviews. Here's where it lands. Shalita then reaches back into the family archive and pulls out a story that is doing more damage than any of the shouting. She claims that when Claressa Shields once fought a woman she names Marina, Claressa Shields came knocking, woke Shalita up out of her sleep while Shalita was pregnant, and asked her to pull up and help. But now that the tables are turned, Shalita says nothing. No call. No apology. No family loyalty in either direction. And straight up, that is not gossip. That is what people online are calling a stacked receipt. That is one single sentence turning a random argument into a documented rhythm in front of thousands of live viewers, and once a story like that hits the timeline, it does not unhit. Because the accusation is not that Claressa Shields is aggressive, she has literally built her career on being aggressive inside four ropes. The accusation is that Claressa Shields is selectively loyal. That she demands loyalty when she needs it and offers none of it back when the same family asks. And in the world of black family drama, that is a specific accusation that hits a specific nerve, and Shalita knew exactly what she was doing when she picked it up. Then, in the middle of everything, Shalita takes a breather. A viewer in her comments asks her something random about a phone number. She jokes. She says she needs the fluffy hair pieces, the long, pretty ones, for her hair. She laughs. She jokes back. In the middle of a live stream that could shape a criminal complaint against Claressa Shields' own family circle, Shalita is still doing fan service. And that right there tells you exactly how deep she is in this. She knows the count is climbing. She knows every screenshot is being saved. She knows this stream is going to be dissected on channels exactly like this one for the next month. And she is treating it like she is the star of her own reality series. That is a person who understands the moment. That is a person who knows the algorithm. That is a person who has watched enough commentary channels to know light-hearted moments in the middle of a serious argument are exactly what viewers remember, exactly what gets clipped, exactly what makes a subject feel human. Whether instinct or calculation, it is working. Now here is where the whole tone snaps. Because Shalita stops joking and turns cold. She says she does not care who Claressa Shields sends out to speak on her behalf. She does not care what statement drops next. She does not care what interview Claressa Shields sits down for, what podcast Claressa Shields calls into, or what carefully worded post Claressa Shields uploads at 3 in the morning to soften the blow. She says the other side damaged property that belongs to Ren Enterprise, and then she drops the sentence that is already being turned into a thumbnail on 10 different channels tonight. Orange looks good on you. Orange is the new black. Have fun wearing it. Straight up, that is not a diss. That is Shalita telling Claressa Shields, publicly, on a recorded feed, that she is walking this into the courthouse and she wants the whole internet holding the receipt when the paperwork lands. She says she is a tax-paying citizen. She says she is pressing this to the fullest extent the law will let her. And then she confirms the piece most viewers missed, she called the police. She filed. She says it is procedure. She says you need a police report to open an insurance claim. But listen to the tone. That is not paperwork energy. That is satisfaction dressed as procedure. That is a woman who understands once a paper trail is created, all the smiling interviews in the world will not erase it. A police report attached to the name Claressa Shields is more permanent than any belt she will ever win. Here's the fold. This is the moment Nigeria's name enters the conversation, and this is where the whole video shifts from a two-woman argument into a family-wide detonation. Shalita accuses Nigeria of playing victim, then goes back into the archives and pulls out an old post about somebody named Rack, a post Shalita says accused a woman of selling government phones. According to Shalita, Nigeria added her name to that post. Compared her to it. Tried to drag her into the same category. And her response is stone. Don't ever in your life compare me to selling government phones. I am never that broken. And then she says the part that turns Nigeria from a bystander into a co-defendant in Shalita's court of public opinion. She says she was leaving Nigeria alone. She was running Claressa Shields down on the internet for a long time, and she never touched Nigeria's name, until Nigeria opened her own mouth first. That is Shalita drawing a line. You do not get to strike first and then cosplay as the wounded party. And baby, That is the exact rhetorical move that separates amateur social media beefs from strategic ones. Amateurs deny everything. Strategists say I only responded because you started it, and then they let the timeline of receipts prove it for them. Straight up, this next piece may be the loudest claim on the entire stream. Shalita alleges that the other side pulled out a box cutter, swung it, stabbed a car with it, and then had the audacity to say do something. Do something. Do something. But nobody on the other side actually touched her. Nobody defended themselves against her. Because as Shalita frames it, no reasonable person runs up on somebody with a box cutter in their hand and other people standing around with items in their pockets. She is essentially saying it was a trap. She is essentially saying the other side wanted her to react, wanted her to swing, wanted her to make one wrong move so the whole story could flip. And Shalita flips the entire narrative into one sentence that is already going viral on stitches everywhere. You recorded your own crime. You thought you were going to rage bait me, and the only person you rage baited was yourself. That is the line. That is the peak end sentence of this whole stream, and I promise you every single reaction video on this whole scandal will build a thumbnail around exactly that quote before the week is over. Because that one sentence does three things at once. It positions Shalita as the composed party. It positions the other side as the aggressor. And it turns the very act of recording, the very foundation of the internet's obsession with this story, into evidence against the person who did the recording. Right after that, Shalita drops the money numbers. She says she is not paying $40,000 for anybody's damages, because she was the one who told them about the card in the first place. She says she is not stalking anybody's Snapchat. She laughs. She says this is funny. And now the real question drops on you as the viewer. Is that a woman rock solid in her innocence? Or is that a woman deflecting with a smile because the receipts are creeping up behind her? That verdict is on you. Because $40,000 is not a small number. $40,000 is not a number you throw out casually. $40,000 is the specific kind of number that lives in a demand letter, a settlement offer, a legal filing. And the fact that Shalita even had a specific number to reject tells you the negotiations behind the scenes have been going on for longer than the public knows. Now the stream turns personal. And when I say personal, I mean the kind of personal that changes the whole texture of an argument. Because Shalita responds to viewers who have been criticizing her parenting, and she says whoever is talking talks just like her, because she is the one who raised them. Then she moves to appearance. She says she looks chopped and screwed to you, boo, she owns it, brings up her husband, and says she doesn't care what strangers on the internet say about how she looks because you can't troll a troll. And then she goes even further. She brings up a sensitive claim on the other side involving a miscarriage and turns it into a weapon inside her own monologue. Straight up, whatever your personal opinion is on this whole scandal, that specific stretch of the stream is where this thing crossed the line from a legal dispute between two women into a wound that will now sit on the internet forever. There is no delete button for what got said in that section. Not for Claressa Shields. Not for Shalita. Not for anybody. That is the exact stretch of the live where the algorithm turned into a moral scale, and the moral scale started to weigh both women, not just one. Because when a scandal goes from he said she said into territory that touches grief, the audience stops picking sides and starts asking who is going to survive this at all. Now peep this because it matters. Shalita insists she never started throwing shots at Nigeria first. She says she was already publicly airing out Claressa Shields for a long time, long before anybody else got involved, and Nigeria voluntarily stepped into that fire. She says you can't strike me and then dress up as the victim. You can't do wrong to me and then flip the script and cry on live. And baby, if that argument holds up, then everything Nigeria posts after this becomes evidence in Shalita's favor, not against her. That is a chess move, whether Shalita knows it or not. Because Shalita just publicly established a timeline. She just publicly established a sequence of events. She just publicly established who spoke first. And once a timeline like that lives on the internet, any deviation from it by Nigeria, any late arriving apology, any statement that contradicts it, all of that becomes ammunition. That is not luck. That is the kind of framing that political operatives get paid six figures to build for candidates in the middle of a scandal, and Shalita just built it in real time on a phone. Here is where the whole thing braids together. Because now you have Shalita saying she is a tax-paying citizen who called the police. She is quoting insurance procedure. She is using words like probable cause. She is naming Ren Enterprise. She is walking through a legal roadmap on camera. And in the same breath, she is threatening jail time, dragging in a miscarriage claim, and mocking Claressa Shields' entire public image. That is the whole strategy right there. Wrap the legal weaponry inside the personal humiliation. Deliver the paperwork and the pain in one package. That is exactly why this clip is not just spreading, it is metastasizing. Pure legal drama gets covered by news channels. Pure personal drama gets covered by gossip channels. A hybrid gets covered by everybody, on every side, in every corner of the algorithm. And that is exactly what Shalita built. Now listen closely because you are about to see how this connects back to the bigger Claressa Shields story that has been building for months. Claressa Shields is the same fighter who has been in the middle of one public fire after another in the past year. There has been the Alycia Baumgardner legal noise. There have been public accusations. There have been the drama posts, the deleted lives, the family arguments that keep spilling into the public square. There have been the interviews where Claressa Shields sat down calmly and tried to explain her version of every previous fire, only for a new fire to start the second she got off camera. And now the biggest one yet, the one where her own cousin, a blood relative, someone who has known Claressa Shields since before the belts, since before the cameras, since before the interviews and the endorsements, is now the loudest voice testifying against her in real time to hundreds of thousands of eyeballs. That is not a stranger with a rumor. That is not a rival stirring something up. That is family. And when family goes public, the entire architecture of a celebrity's brand takes a hit no publicist can smooth over. And it does not stop at Shalita. Because the internet is doing what the internet does. Every single old clip of Claressa Shields is getting re-uploaded. Every old interview. Every old subtweet. Every old family photo. Every old moment on Claressa Shields' own YouTube channel. The comment sections are being combed for hints. The old rumors about the Harvey circles, the old rumors about the fighter romances, the old rumors about the management fights, everything is coming back up to the surface at the exact same moment Shalita is on live saying the words warning shot and .40 caliber into a microphone. And that is the compounding effect that Claressa Shields' team cannot control. Because every single new piece of Shalita content forces a search on the name Claressa Shields, and every single search on the name Claressa Shields pulls back not just Shalita's newest video but every archived controversy that has ever been associated with her. It is a domino chain, and Shalita just kicked the first tile over. Here's what nobody in the mainstream is saying out loud yet. Shalita did not just go live. Shalita released a legal, cultural, and family drama grenade all wrapped into one package, and she did it in front of an audience that was already trained by months of Claressa Shields news to believe the worst. That is not a coincidence. That is timing. Whether Shalita realized it or not, she picked the exact moment the algorithm was hungriest for anything with the name Claressa Shields attached. Every stitch, every reaction, every commentary channel, including this one, straight up, is now feeding the machine that keeps her name in circulation. She is either the smartest cousin in America right now or the most reckless one, and honestly, that verdict is on you too. Because there are two very different reads on this. One read says Shalita is a woman who got shot at by her cousin, called the police, and refused to be silent about it, and the whole world happens to be watching. Another read says Shalita is a woman who saw a moment, sized it up, and detonated the moment on purpose because she knew exactly what the returns would be. Both reads have evidence. Both reads have witnesses. Both reads have receipts. And neither read is going to be resolved in the comments of a single video. Now peep this because this is the piece almost every reaction video is skipping. Shalita does something almost surgical midstream. She admits things. She actually admits them. She says if I did it, I own it, keep the receipts moving. And in the same breath she pivots and asks Claressa Shields to answer the questions that Claressa Shields keeps ducking. That is a rhetorical technique, one that lawyers use on cross-examination. You admit the small charge in front of the jury so the jury believes you when you deny the big charge. Shalita, on a live stream, without a legal team on the screen, is doing exactly that in real time. She is offering the audience partial guilt in exchange for full credibility. And baby, whether you love her or hate her, that is calculated. That is the kind of move that reads like instinct on the surface but functions like strategy in the outcome. That is the reason certain sentences from that live are being replayed on channels like ours, while sentences from Claressa Shields' past interviews are aging badly by the hour. Now let's talk about Shabria for a second, because Shalita brings her up specifically and it is important. Shalita's line is simple and cutting. She says Shabria does not want any smoke. She says Claressa Shields will not pull up on Shabria the same way Claressa Shields pulled up on her. She calls it selective aggression. She says Claressa Shields only pulls up on the ones she thinks she can handle, and she never once pulled up on a woman named Mariel. Straight up, that is a devastating accusation to make against a professional fighter because it does not attack her skill, it attacks her willingness. It says the belts are real, but the courage outside the ring is selective. That is a specific kind of shot. That is a shot engineered to bruise the brand, not the record. Because a champion can survive a loss on the ledger. A champion cannot survive the reputation of picking easy targets. And that is precisely the reputation Shalita just tried to attach to Claressa Shields on a public feed watched by hundreds of thousands of people who have been following the sport for years. Now here's the fold. Once Shalita finishes the Marina story, the pattern is impossible to unsee. Because now you have a stacked timeline. You have Claressa Shields allegedly waking Shalita up out of pregnancy sleep to run down on Marina. You have Claressa Shields allegedly firing shots in the air with Shalita outside. You have Claressa Shields allegedly refusing to pull up when the tables turned. You have Claressa Shields allegedly staying silent while her name is on a live stream in front of thousands. Baby, that is not one story. That is 4 stories with the same subject in the same seat. And when the algorithm sees 4 aligned semantic patterns around one entity name, that is when the recommendation engine goes into overdrive. That is when clips start finding audiences they have never touched before. That is when kids who have never seen a Claressa Shields fight start seeing her name on their feed for the first time. That is when audiences overseas, in Nigeria, in the UK, in Latin America, start pulling up their laptops to find out who this Claressa Shields person is and why her family is on fire. That is the ceiling of a scandal, when a name breaks out of its own audience and enters everybody else's. Now let me pull the emotional layer out one more time because this is the moment nobody wants to talk about. When Shalita brings up the miscarriage claim on the other side, the whole tone of the stream stops feeling like a family fight and starts feeling like a public wound. That is a moment where 2 women, regardless of who is right, regardless of who fired first, regardless of who called the police first, both lose. Because the internet does not forgive lines like that easily, and neither does time. The receipts of that specific sentence will exist forever. It will be searchable. It will be quoted in interviews. It will be brought up years from now. That is the cost of going nuclear on a live stream. That is the ceiling of clout, the one nobody sees until they have already crossed it. That is the reason so many public figures, from athletes to musicians to political candidates, spend so much money on the discipline of restraint. Because a single sentence, uttered in anger, at the wrong moment, will outlive every other sentence you have ever spoken in your entire career. Shalita crossed that line on that live stream. And whether the audience calls it justified or reckless, the outcome is the same. That sentence is now permanent. Straight up, when you strip out the shouting and the props and the phone flipping and the fluffy hair jokes, what Shalita really delivered on this stream is a full-scale rewrite of the public perception around Claressa Shields. Because up until this moment, Claressa Shields could stand behind the belts, the medals, the endorsements, the interviews, the champion narrative. But now, in one single live stream, Shalita has planted an alternate storyline directly into the algorithm, a storyline that says the belts and the family and the private life do not match. And once an alternate storyline like that enters the recommendation graph attached to a name like Claressa Shields, no PR team, no publicist, no press release, no ghostwritten statement can unplant it. It just lives there. Growing. Feeding on every new video. Every new comment. Every new stitch. Every new podcast episode that mentions Claressa Shields by name, even in passing, will now trigger the algorithm to serve up Shalita's live stream to that podcast's viewers. That is how deeply the 2 names have merged. That is how quickly a family fight becomes a permanent brand modifier. And here is the piece nobody in the commentary space is saying yet: Shalita, whether she wins the legal fight or not, has already won the algorithm. Because right now, at this exact moment, every single search for the name Claressa Shields is going to pull up Shalita's face somewhere in the results. Every recommendation. Every rabbit hole. Shalita has attached herself to Claressa Shields' name so tightly that the two are now algorithmically inseparable. That is not clout. That is co-branding by force. That is the kind of move most publicists spend six figures trying to engineer for a client, and Shalita just did it on a phone from what she said was her ranch. Baby, whether you love her tactics or hate them, you cannot say the strategy did not work. Hold that phrase in your head, co-branding by force, because that is going to be the theme of every follow-up video and every follow-up article about this situation for the rest of the year. Shalita rewrote the rules of celebrity-adjacent scandal on one live stream, and most of the industry has not noticed yet. Now let me hit you with the next layer, because it is worth sitting with. The Alycia Baumgardner situation. Because when you play Shalita's stream back-to-back with the Alycia Baumgardner allegations that have been simmering all year, you start to see something that looks less like drama and more like a pattern. Claressa Shields is in the middle of a moment where her name is being dragged into two entirely separate legal-adjacent conversations at the same time. One professional. One personal. One sports-focused. One family-focused. Both public. Both loud. Both feeding each other. And that is the exact media pattern that turns a champion into a lightning rod. Because once a public figure is at the center of more than one active controversy, the audience stops filing incidents in separate mental folders and starts seeing them as evidence of a shared cause. That is a dangerous position to be in as an athlete whose whole brand depends on being seen as focused, disciplined, and unshakable inside the ring. Now peep the Papoose angle, because it is quietly connected too. Every time the Claressa Shields name has spiked in the past several months, a Papoose interview has appeared shortly after. Sometimes praising Claressa Shields as the best thing that ever happened to him. Sometimes deflecting when the interviewer gently steers toward the unfinished divorce, the timeline, the questions that will not go away. Whatever your read on Papoose is, the pattern of timing is not something the internet has missed. And now, on top of the Alycia Baumgardner situation, on top of the Papoose situation, on top of the deleted lives and deleted posts, you have Shalita. You have a cousin. You have blood. And the pattern gets loud enough that even people who have never followed Claressa Shields' career start feeling like something bigger than one live stream is happening. Now let me pull it back to Shalita specifically. Shalita, straight up, is the reason this story has legs. She is the reason the algorithm is pumping. She is the reason your feed is full of Claressa Shields updates you did not subscribe to. And whether people admit it or not, she is delivering commentary at a level most professional media figures cannot pull off on a live stream. She is bouncing between legal terminology, personal insults, family history, and Bible references without ever once looking rattled. That is a performance, and the internet is going to reward it regardless of who is telling the truth in the underlying dispute. Now peep this last piece before we head into the closing, because it may be the biggest strategic move Shalita made on the whole live. She said she is not blocking anybody. She said if people want to keep talking, let them talk. She said the mean comments do not bother her. She said you cannot troll a troll. And that particular line, you cannot troll a troll, is the exact kind of self-labeling that changes the audience's expectation. Because the moment Shalita called herself a troll out loud on her own live, she preempted every negative comment that could be made about her tone. If somebody says she is being petty, she already said she is a troll. If somebody says she is being dramatic, she already said she is a troll. If somebody says she is exaggerating, she already said she is a troll. That is a rhetorical armor that most people never think to build for themselves, and Shalita built it in one sentence, in the middle of a fight, without a script. Now peep this too. Shalita also went out of her way to say her husband loves the way she looks. She went out of her way to say she was going to see him after the stream. She went out of her way to say she was going to check on her son. In the middle of an aggressive, emotionally charged, potentially legal live stream, Shalita made sure the audience knew she has a family. A husband. A child. A home. A ranch, in her words. That is not accidental sequencing. That is a woman deliberately humanizing herself in real time, so that when the story travels beyond the immediate viewers, the version of Shalita that reaches new audiences is not just an angry woman with a phone. It is a wife. It is a mother. It is a whole person with responsibilities and relationships. And that framing is going to shape every article, every reaction, every clip that gets pulled from this stream for the rest of the news cycle. Now let me hit you with the final piece, the piece that ties this to every other Claressa Shields story you have seen in the past 12 months. Because when you line up the Alycia Baumgardner drama, the Papoose interview timing debates, the deleted lives on Claressa Shields' own channel, the old cousin rumors, and now this, Shalita's 40-day 40-night broadcast, the pattern that emerges is not chaotic. It is rhythmic. Every single one of those stories drops at the exact moment the news cycle around Claressa Shields threatens to cool down. Every single one of them reignites the algorithm. Every single one of them keeps her name in circulation. Whether that is a coincidence or whether that is a strategy is the second biggest open question this whole scandal leaves behind, and honestly, that verdict is on you too. Because at some point, when a specific name shows up in a specific rhythm at the peak of every attention lull, the internet stops calling it coincidence and starts calling it strategy. And once that word gets attached to Claressa Shields' brand, an entirely different conversation begins. Now let me leave you with one more thought before we close this out. Shalita may not be a professional media personality. She may not have a communications team, a manager coaching her on sound bites, or a lawyer telling her which words to keep off the record. But everything Shalita did on that live, the pacing, the rhetorical structure, the pattern of admissions, the timing of humanizing moments, the withholding and releasing of information, reads like a masterclass in unfiltered communication. And that live stream is going to be studied, transcribed, and broken down on commentary channels, legal podcasts, family drama shows, and TikTok stitches for the next several weeks. That is the ceiling of a live stream done right, even by accident. So here it is. Here is the question I need y'all to sit with in the comments, because this one, is not simple. Was Shalita's live stream a legitimate police report from a woman who says she was actually shot at by a family member? Or was Shalita's live stream a fully calculated brand play, a woman weaponizing the biggest name in her family tree to attach her own name to a national algorithm? Because the receipts on this stream go both ways. She talked insurance claims. She talked probable cause. She talked police reports. And she also talked jail threats, appearance jabs, and miscarriage claims, all in the same breath. That combination is exactly why this clip is metastasizing across every platform tonight. That combination is exactly why Claressa Shields, the two-time undisputed, the Olympic gold medalist, the GWOAT, is trending for the wrong reason for the third time this month. And that combination is exactly why the entire family circle around Claressa Shields, Shalita, Nigeria, Shabria, Marina, Rak, and every name Shalita fired off, will now be searched, stitched, dissected, and turned into content until the next scandal drops. So drop the verdict in the comments. Tell me what you really think happened here. Tell me whose story you trust. Tell me whether Shalita is a witness, a co-defendant, or a whole strategist working 3 moves ahead of everybody in the room. Tell me whether Claressa Shields deserves the benefit of the doubt or whether the pattern is finally too loud. Tell me whether the family dynamic is going to reset after this or whether the wound is now permanent. And while you are down there, do me a favor and drop a name, tell me which of these characters you want the next breakdown on. Nigeria. Shabria. Alycia Baumgardner. Papoose. Rak. Marina. Whichever thread you want pulled next, I will pull it. Because I promise you, we are only 3 stops into what looks like a 10-stop journey, and every stop is going to have receipts, revelations, and moments that force the audience to reset the entire mental map of what they thought they knew about the greatest woman of all time and the family circle around her. And if you are new to the channel, welcome in, baby. Tap that thumbs up if you are still watching this deep, hit subscribe so you never miss the next drop, and turn on that notification bell because I promise you this Claressa Shields story is not close to finished. There is more coming. There is always more coming. There are already whispers about a follow-up live from Shalita, rumors of a statement being prepared on Claressa Shields' side, and commentary channels racing to break exclusives. And when the next update lands, and it will land, I will be right back here breaking it down piece by piece, receipt by receipt, sentence by sentence. Until then, take care of your people, protect your peace, keep your circle small, keep your camera off when the temperature rises, and I will catch you on the very next one. Peace, baby. See you soon.